Okay guys, so I've got the Geo pulled into the garage here, and I am following the service manual's instructions on all of this, even though I can probably do it without it. I just like to go by the book on just about everything I do, except for like, oil changes and shit like that. That's, really easy and universal. I just like to make sure I do everything right. This looks like it's going to be a pretty easy job to remove this, in all. I've got to remove 2 screws in the instrument cluster lower covers. I can show you guys that. The 4 screws on instrument cluster bezel, the speedometer cable. But anyways, what I have to do is basically remove these 2 screws right here, and hopefully this panel is just going to come right out. This Geo doesn't have a tilt wheel installed, unfortunately. That would make my job a lot easier. I already disconnected the negative terminal on the battery, and then behind that I think there's the 4 screws are somewhere back here or something, but I'll let you guys know what's going to happen here shortly. And so here, you guys can't even hardly see it, and good thing I've got extra zip ties here in the focus, but this isn't a zip tie. That's actually some weird type of tie on here. I'll pull one of these off and show it to you guys. I've never seen a tie like this before. It just wraps around itself like that. It's got 2 balls on the end. It's kind of interesting. And this brings me to another point. Go ahead and put this bad boy back on here. This would be a good time to put some gloves on. Time for its physical. Had to do that. So let's go back. Right there. And see what I can do to get this thing out. I'm just putting the ties on the other part of the cable here. I'm going to have to find the easiest way to get this out of here. That was easy enough. Now it should be able to break free. Kind of pull this rubber sheath back so I can get to this wishbone thing that's supposedly on the end of it. Which I can't seem to find. So now that that's done, I don't really know if I needed to do that or not, as it seems that I can just remove the clip from the cluster once I get everything out. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. And so what I'm going to start on now is removing these 2 screws. I'm going to go ahead and shut the camera off and just do it, but it's pretty straightforward. I just got to get a screwdriver in here and take them out. And I got those 2 removed, and I figured out what other screws it was talking about. Underneath the bezel here, this whole assembly comes off apparently, and there's 1 screw here and 1 screw over here. Right there. So that's what I'm going to be removing, and I got a smaller screwdriver in order to do this, but they come out pretty easily. Not too much force to get them out, or torque, or what have you. So now, looks like I've got probably 1 more here somewhere, but these little deals just come off. I'm just putting them up there to make sure they're safe and whatnot. And I might end up having to take off this part and this part down here on the steering column. So, be right back in a second. And so I went ahead and, get my light here, removed all these 4 screws here in the bottom of the steering column. I'm going to have to remove that, and I'm going to have to remove this bottom trim piece right here in order to get to that little screw right there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like I said before, this stuff is all pretty straightforward. You'd really just have to know how to remove a screw. So I'm going to get to doing that, and then hopefully we'll get to another part here. And as you guys can see, things look a lot different. There's actually another screw here in the middle, and I pulled that out. The two column pieces, once I got the screws out of them, they just pop off and pop back in. It's all, you know, clips and everything that's in this, small clips. And in order to facilitate removing that, because this top column piece here kept hanging up on this, I just went ahead and removed the AC and fan controls, and it's just sitting right there. The knobs are there next to my e-cigarette. So it doesn't look like there's much more to do other than start working on the actual cluster and bezel themselves. I am going to have to remove a couple more screws here. And so after much fuss and cussing, I finally got this thing out without having to drop the steering column. The cluster looks pretty simple to remove, so I'm going to go ahead and start working on that. I am going to be swapping over the bulbs from this one, at least the ones that are still good, into the new one with the ones that are bad. So yeah, I'm going to get doing on this, and I went ahead and put all these trim pieces underneath the car so I won't step on them by accident. And then there's those cheap Lanzar door speakers I put in. The panels are right here. I just need to put them back on. So it sounds fine. But anyways, I digress, and I'm going to get to start to remove this cluster. I have to remove these two screws here on the sides, and then down below here, there and there, there's two more screws that have to come out. So I'm going to get to doing that, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so now as you can see, I've got the cluster moved back a little bit. I'm trying to remove these clips here. There's 3 of them, just like on the other cluster. And they're being a real pain in the ass right now, but I'm supposed to try and remove them gently. I don't see how that's going to work, but I'm going to get to doing that. Okay, so it was a little weird, but right after I said that last part of that clip, I went and tried to remove them, and they came off really easily. So now, just got to somehow get the cluster out of here. It's hung up right there. And here's the old cluster. Sure was a lot of work, but I got the job done. Speedo cable's back there somewhere. And, oh, that's funny, there's a bird feather in here. Pull that thing out. I have no idea. A bird die in there or something? Who knows? So now that I got this out, I'm going to swap over the good bulbs from this one into the new cluster. And so here's the old one. I removed some of the working bulbs, well, over here anyways, and put them in here. Got the old one sitting right there. I only found one that was burned out black like that. Other one was, so I'm going to go ahead and install this. And I am consulting the computer here from time to time. So basically it's just going to go back in the same way the other one came out. Going to install those 3 connectors there. Reconnect the Speedo cable, which is conveniently in a slightly different location. I'm hopeful that that 2 or 3 inch difference from the center isn't going to be that much of a problem. I don't think it will, but we'll have to see what happens. And I'm going to get to doing that. You guys can pretty much figure out what I'm doing so far. So I'm just making sure all these bulbs are good. They look fine. So I'm going to go ahead and install this bad boy, and hopefully I don't get into any more trouble. And so I got the 3 connectors in. Now I've got to go under here, get my arm up underneath here, and reconnect the speedometer cable. That should be simple enough. Be back in a sec. And so because this was at such a weird angle that I had to reconnect the speedometer cable, this is how you guys should know I'm an aircraft mechanic. I'm used to working with, you know, tight spaces where I have to very oddly contort myself sometimes. So this is what I used to lay on. This speaker box. I just laid on it and put my head underneath there and got my arm up into underneath the dash and just reconnected it. Made the job a whole lot easier and a lot less painful. So that's good. That's what you can use old speaker boxes for that haven't been used in years. So I guess now I can go ahead and ops check it. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the battery. And I'm going to open up the garage door a little bit. And just so I know that everything's good, scratch myself a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn the car on and see what happens. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, now let's see what happens. Got my clutch foot in. Key. Clutch in. Oh yeah, forgot one important part. The ignition wire. I knew I was forgetting something. Now that boy's back on. Looks like I'm idling just about 700. You know, maybe my idle is a little low. I don't know for sure. But there you have it. Then again, it did cool off quite a bit while I was doing this. It's been sitting for a while. I am fairly certain that this is the right gauge cluster. And I did know it was dropping RPMs like that even before I did this. Gas gauge is working, slowly coming up. That's good. That's good. Looks like the lights are turning on. You can just barely see it in the daylight. I don't think the camera's doing a good enough job of picking it up. I really don't think it is, but they are coming on. So that's good. It's idling at 900 now that I just restarted it. So that's cool. I know everything works. Waiting for the coolant gauge to come back up. See what happens on that. I'm going to let it run here for a while and, you know, see where we can go. And so this has shown me something. I think some of my vacuum lines are bad. I've kind of had that idea in the back of my head for a while. The coolant temperature is working just fine. It's coming up. And to point this out, I think that's pretty accurate as far as the idle goes. It's idling at about 1050 right now. And it started off, as you guys saw, idling at about 700 or 800. So I did look it up on the internet, and if this was a 4-cylinder gauge cluster, it would be reading a lot lower. Even at that original idle, it would have idled down here on the tachometer where that second line is, just above the 0 one. It's supposed to idle like 25% less if it's a 4-cylinder cluster and a 3-cylinder car, which makes sense. So what I think is causing this high idle is I think I got some vacuum lines that are bad. And I also looked around. And I did notice that I've got this connector, that connector right here, and then just a random line coming out of here. You guys can't really see it all that well. They aren't going to anything. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to consult the forum about. If it's not that kind of stuff, then it's safe to assume some of these vacuum lines are bad, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and replace them all. It has been idling like that, you know, going up and down in the RPMs just by, you know, sound. And I think that is because of the vacuum lines. This pretty much, you know, just confirmed it, that I'm idling a little high. And vacuum lines can cause trouble like that. So that's going to be another thing that I'm going to have to fix. Shouldn't be that big of a deal though, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together. You guys have already seen that. Then hopefully at the end of this video, let's take it out for a cruise. Okay, so I'm going about 55. It's idling at 3,000. Everything looks good. It looks like this is the right gauge cluster. Just as I was saying before, I'm pretty sure that some of my vacuum lines are bad. If not, those connectors need to be going somewhere. I don't know where they're supposed to go though. I am going to have to check that out on the forum. The trip meter works just fine. The odometer, you know, your mile gauge, it's working fine. Everything seems to be doing just good, you know, just fine. I did put 3 gallons of gas into it, and it got me up to a full half a tank. So now I'm doing 60 at 30-50 RPM. Hopefully this guy in front of me is going to start doing 65. So it seems to be working just good. Hopefully I can get to a place where I can do a 0 to 60 here at some point. Wish I had brought the other cannon with me. That would have been a hell of a lot more helpful. Easy to hold on to. So that's good. Everything seems to be going just fine, just fine. And I did bring my toolbox just in case things went awry, however you want to pronounce it. So this is cool. I got a working gauge cluster in it now, and now I'm doing 65 at 3250 RPM. It's really weird because these things do really good on the freeway. And at freeway speeds, you know, 65 or 55, they idle at 3,000 or above. And every other car I've driven has idled at about 2,500. The Focus idles at 2,500. The Ranger did. And everybody else's car I've seen at freeway speeds idles at 25. But something interesting about these cars, but 65 and I'm doing almost 3,500. And if I keep going down this road long enough, hopefully I can get a 0 to 60 done. So I'll be back in a sec. Idling at 1,000. Went for those other cars up there to get out of the way so I can go ahead and do this. Got another guy coming up behind me, so before I can turn around, go ahead and set you guys down. I need to get the rest of that unburned oil out of this system anyways. I got no one behind me, so that's good. First gear, 3, 2, 1. To 60. I don't know if that's any faster than the other one. Crammage, I'm sure you're going to chime in at some point and go back and look at the other 0 to 60 video I did. See if I can find a place to stop off here. I'll see if I can do one more. This road's pretty busy for this time of day. And that's even kind of surprising because usually this road's fairly empty. Alright, try 2. Didn't want to go into 3rd there. This transmission is kind of old. There you have it, 0 to 60, second one. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it much better than that. At least not going downhill. This is a flat road, by the way, no hills, no weird terrain. So let's get back to the house and